Welcome to Puck Talk CS. We have an amazing guest, Kristy Flannery, hockey news brotherhood, writing about the New Jersey Devils, doing a fantastic job covering them for the last two seasons. That's not where it all started, and we'll talk about that as we get along with our conversation here. Kristy, it's great to have you on.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. This is so exciting.
I'm super pumped. Steve, take us away.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, as this is always a fun time to talk. We got Rangers, Devils, round one this year. So let's talk some puck. I do want to start off by asking very quickly, do you have a favorite Rangers Devils moment?
Oh God. The one that for some reason always sticks out is obviously at the start of the game. I don't even know what year it was because everything blends together, but like the line brawl. That is always the first thing that comes to my mind. And the coach is getting into it, and Dinas Zuber is having to basically like pull DeBoer back. For some reason, that's the first thing that always sticks out in my head. But then you have Clarkson and Sean Avery. Like those were good days to like those were good times. But yeah, those are it's all the older ones, I guess. Not too old, but I guess that's right around the time when I started getting into hockey. So that was kind of my like Clarkson and Avery were my introduction to the Devils Rangers rivalry.
That's awesome. I love that. I mean, I think for Steve and I, we were both at that time like fifth grade, middle school. I mean, you couldn't get more peak, I think, rivalry. But I think now that we're talking today, it's because it feels like that's coming back. And I really want to know what it's like from that side of the rivalry. Like, I think all of our conversations so far have just been between Steve and I about the Devils so far. So super excited to have you with us.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, this is gonna be fun.
All right. So, first question off the top. I think this is more about you and your journey.
Oh no.
You didn't start with the hockey beat. So, that's not always the case in the world of journalism, right? To drift from one avenue to another. Tell me about that. Like what went behind that decision? Just passion?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to be a writer. I never really went and was like, I need to be like a hard-nosed reporter. I always wanted to just be a writer. And I ended up going to school. I paid my own way. So I have an associate's degree in journalism. I didn't really see a point in going into debt to get a bachelor's degree.
Hmm.
And I paid my own way through school. So I ended up working at a law firm down the street. And then I kind of just stayed in law for like 10 years because, bills and all those things. And I got to a point where I was like, I always knew I wanted to do writing, and it just made sense for me to combine my passion for hockey, my passion for writing. It just made logical sense to me. And it was just really a nagging feeling that just didn't go away for a really long time. And my husband was like, you know what? You're not in a good place right now with this job. Like your mental health is really struggling. Quit this job and pursue writing and see what happens. And I quit my job, got a job writing. I got my credential that next season, and here we are.
So this is recent times.
So this is my third season. And when I left the law firm, it was in February of, I guess, 4 seasons ago, technically. So I wrote for, I think I like covered I wrote about the Nashville Predators because there was no openings to cover the Devils with that publication. And then by September, I had a credential with the New Jersey Devils to work with that. So yeah.
That is an awesome, I think, story overall. Just someone to actually initiate that. I mean, in this day and age, I feel like everybody says like, "Oh, I wish I did," and you're sitting here being able to say you did.
Yeah.
What would you encourage others to do, like based on that, based on your journey?
I think just like for me, it was just a nagging feeling in my gut that just wouldn't go away. And it just got to a point where I'm like, I'm not 22 anymore, but at least if I try it and I fail, at least I know it didn't work out. That's fine. I can always go back to working in an office. I think it's hard for people because like life's expensive and not everyone has the luxury. Like I have a very supportive husband, and he's really the reason that I made the jump. I always tell people, even if you can't do it as drastic as I did, where you just quit your job and kind of just say, screw it, always have that passion project and always do that and build that behind the scenes. I was writing for myself for a long time, trying to kind of, I guess, like hone my craft behind the scenes for a long time. Just never give up on your dream, I guess, is really what it comes down to. But you might just have to be, I guess, a little bit more tactful in how you approach pursuing that dream, but never give up on it, I guess would be my advice, if that makes
I
sense.
No, that makes, I mean, it makes sense. I can't say from my own experiences, and I don't know if Steve-O can either from his own, but I think for us at our age, it's inspiring, to hear that. I think for any listener, because it truly is, I think, something that's special is like to see someone who really just like switched up, did what what they truly wanted to, and now like you're covering a team that's on the come up. You
Yeah.
also traveled not only from one office to another, but, and I mean, we're talking a law office and the Prudential Center. I mean, it doesn't get
Yeah.
much better than that. But you endeavor to Switzerland
Mhm.
to meet Nico Hischier.
Yeah.
What was that trip? Like, I need to know everything about that.
So the funny thing was, is I was scrolling on social media like I always do, and I saw that Nico collaborated with Switzerland Tourism to do this contest to have two fans go to Switzerland. And I saw that it was only on Instagram. And I know just from interacting with my followers on Twitter, a lot of people don't have Instagram. So I wrote
Mhm.
a little like article about it just so that people knew that the contest was existed. And Switzerland Tourism got in touch with me in early July and said, "Hey, we saw your article. We need an exclusive journalist to cover the trip. Like, do you want to come?" And I thought it was a joke because it was an Instagram DM. I clicked on it, and the girl that DM'd me was actually like her and Jonas Siegenthaler followed each other. So I'm like, okay, there's like a legit connection here. And I think I stared at my phone for 20 minutes, and then my husband finally came like out of the shower, and I was like, "You got to read this." And he's like, "You're going." And lucky enough, they allowed him to come with me. So the two of us went. It was like our unofficial honeymoon. And yeah, I knew 1 month before the flight that I was going. And what was the craziest thing about it, which nobody really knew, was when this whole thing happened, my passport had previously expired in like 2020. So I told the girl, I said, "Listen, I would love to do this, but I don't have a passport." So I had to go through the passport agency. I was not handed my passport until Friday at 6 o'clock in the evening, and my flight was that Saturday. So that entire month, I had so much anxiety because I was like, at any point, they could just tell me, like, your passport's not going to be done in time. Nobody was ever giving me an answer that I was actually going to go. So I was packing, I was prepping like my questions and all this stuff. And I didn't, it was a wild month leading up to that trip because at any point, the passport agency could have said no.
That, you know what? It's the hardest thing is to be prepared, and the waiting's the hardest part.
Yeah.
You get over there, and then like from all the videos I've seen, it looks like you're like out in the country. What was the trip like?
It was it was amazing. Switzerland Tourism told my husband and I, they were like, "Look, our plan is for you to get on the plane. And once you land in Zurich, like we take care of everything. Like you don't even have to think, just focus on your writing and that's it." And that's literally how the trip was. Our tour guide met us at the airport by luggage, and I didn't have to do anything. They took care of anything and everything you could imagine. And it really was in Nico's region. So it was in Valais. I don't even know if I'm saying that correctly, to be completely honest. But it was just in the mountains. It was so peaceful. It was in the country. And I've never been to Europe before. So it was just culturally, it was just like mind blowing to see kind of like how these Swiss players grew up because it's so different. And then just to kind of appreciate the fact that like Nico came from this nice, quiet, clean, safe area. And now all of a sudden he's thrown into Newark and Jersey City and Hoboken and New York. And just, I'm like, the fact that he was able to make that transition, even though, he was in Canada for a little bit, but to make that transition from Switzerland to now being a regular New Jersey resident, I like so much more respect for the players, and to see him in that environment and see him with the fans. It was just, I still can't even believe I went. I wrote an article about it for the magazine that's coming out in a couple of weeks. And I'm like, I still can't believe I did it, let alone write an article about it. Cause it hasn't really sunk in yet that that experience happened.
That is awesome. I mean, by the way, plug away here. All this is also going up for our THM page. So that is awesome to hear about. Not only, how the trip came about, how
Yeah.
awesome it was, probably to just be with like hanging out with Nico in his home country. What was the vibe you got from Switzerland? Like Roman Yossi, Swiss player, now Nico. Like, is it something that like you can see that the younger players are looking up to them? Like, what's the vibe there?
What's funny is when you go there and you kind of see how they are just as a country, and then you see kind of like Timo Meyer, and it's like they all like Akira, Siegenthaler, it's like they all kind of have that same general kind of way about them that I'm like, it's a cultural thing. And I remember during our media availability, like the first one, somebody asked Akira if when he went back to Switzerland after the playoffs, if he was kind of like that hero in Switzerland. And I knew what his answer was going to be from being there. And I was like, nobody bothered him about that because that's not how the Swiss are. And Akira's like, yeah, he's like, it's not really like a big deal over there. So there's definitely certain things that I can kind of pick up on now. And then like, oh, like it's a Swiss thing. Like that's just how they are. Like it's weird because they're friendly, but they're not overly outgoing. And what I mean by that is they said when you go to a bar in New York or New Jersey and you sit at the bar, somebody's going to talk to you. Someone's going to start having chit chat with you. In Switzerland, that they don't do that. Like you sit at the bar and no one's talking to you. And it's not that they're rude, they're just not outgoing like that. So there's definitely certain things that I picked up on. And now even watching them interact with media now, I'm like, oh, like that makes more sense now. So for me, it was just great. Cause you guys know how it is. Like when you see them in the media room and you have like PR and you have a bunch of cameras and microphones in their face, it's different than just seeing them on a glacier. Like it's just it's more relaxed. It's just a completely different environment. So that was honestly the best part for me, was just seeing him in such a low key environment.
So I gather two things from that. So no free drink from someone in Switzerland. And I think too, then I mean, is that like, do you find your professional relationship with Nico now is like stronger having that experience?
I think it's more of an understanding. I think
Okay.
it was a situation where like I'm not the most vocal person in the media room. Like I prefer one-on-ones. You rarely kind of hear me on camera. I like sitting down and having that face-to-face, like person to person kind of interaction. And I think after that trip, and obviously I can't speak for Nico, I felt like he understood me better and he understood where I was coming from better. And I think that's really important because I think when you look at media, there's a whole spectrum of different personalities and different approaches. And I think it was good for me to kind of explain to him in that environment, like, look, this is kind of how I do my job.
That's awesome.
I think that was kind of a good thing for me. Like it just made me feel better. So I'm like, listen, I'm not trying to trap you. I'm not trying, like, I'm not that kind of reporter, not that kind of writer. So it was good to kind of get that, like, I understand you, you understand me.
Is he the youngest captain in history?
For the Devils,
Yeah.
no,
No.
I don't believe so.
He was
Someone's gonna yell at me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I don't. I haven't checked, guys. It's been a hot minute.
Listen, I know busy days when you're hitting the road going all the way out to Switzerland, and I know the Devils are they're off to a hot start again. I was fortunate enough, I walked in May from school. I covered the Frozen Four. Quinnipiac was like, I got to broadcast for that. Gaining that experience and seeing a team win, like when you see a team come up and you report on them all year and see them reach that peak, it's special. And one of those players down there was Luke Hughes. Now, turning the convo here to this season, what was it like for you to watch the Devils come up in the years that you began reporting?
It's so fun because my first year with the team was the year that they went through 7 or 8 goaltenders and nothing went right for them. So my first year, the post game, conferences, like they were tough that year because they just, nothing was going right for them. They were dealing with too many injuries. And then you kind of saw last year and kind of the turnaround of it and what they were really capable of. So I feel like I'm lucky that it's been 3 different experiences. It was like almost the worst of the worst in year 1, the exceeding expectations, like really surprising, great year 2. And now I'm in year 3 where they're good, but now they have an expectation and now there's pressure. And now it's watching this group come together and figure out how they're going to like handle the pressure that is on them. So I think I've gotten 3 kind of different themes, which I'm very grateful for.
That is awesome. I mean, now entering this season, it's a whole new look. And something Steve and I have talked about a lot was, and I think it's something I talk about a lot, when the Rangers ascended right into contention, it was like last season was tough for them because every team's now up to play the Rangers, right? Now this season, it seems like every team is up to play the Devils. Is that the sense you're getting?
Yeah, I think so. I think that they're getting the best of their opponents night in and night out. I don't think they're no longer the team where if a team's playing a back-to-back, they're not going to give the Devils their backup goaltender. I think that kind of shift is happening and they know their game now. You can go back and look at a bunch of coaches, press conferences last year after morning skates, or and saying about the Devils' speed. It's surprising how fast they are. That's not the case this year. They know.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
with I want to even mention with that too, like what you're saying with the turnaround is like you went from fire Lindy chants to now they were chanting, what was it the other night? Like
we went from fire Lindy to sorry Lindy, but now
mhm,
we're back to, I think people are on the the fire Lindy train.
really?
According to Twitter, I think I'm not a sports fan. So
Hmm.
for me to watch sports fans on social media is like fascinating because I just don't get it.
Hmm.
Sports fans are reactionary, and I think that even though I think right now the Devils are fourth in the Metro, they don't have a bad record considering kind of how the season's gone for them. Like they're pulling it out somewhere.
Hmm.
And it's just kind of funny to see just that instant reaction of like the coach got to go. But yeah, I think that's just sports fans. I don't think it's that. I think it's just sports in general.
Yeah, especially like hyper the way Twitter is it's like a super
Reactionary.
like yeah,
Yeah.
super reactionary. Everyone echo chamber, everything's bouncing off the walls there. So um with Jack Hughes, right? He starts off where he's having like extremely historic milestones. Like in an interview with 32 Thoughts, he was like Igor, like one of the best in the league. The sides are both drumming up, but we're seeing now on both sides, Fox is down. He
Yeah.
won the Norris in 21. Now Jack Hughes goes down. He's like easily a Hart favorite. How is that affecting the Devils' play without that guy? Like it seems like they're really deep, but is it really taking a toll?
So I'm going to be honest because I actually talked about this with my podcast co-host. I think when you say that the Devils have depth, I
Hmm.
think the Devils have bodies, right? Like, once
Hmm.
Nolan Foote gets healthy, they have Nolan Foote as an option. Tice Thompson, they have people available when fully healthy. Lazar or Nosek might be the odd man out every other couple nights. But I think what fans are seeing now, and this isn't like I always say this, I don't mean this to be disrespectful because obviously if you're in the NHL, you're a good player. Duh.
Hmm.
But where's the drop off in talent?
Okay.
From the players that are your regulars, like because let's be honest, not many players are as talented as Jack Hughes, and not that many players are as good as Nico Hischier either. These
Hmm.
are first overall picks for a reason. And I think what fans are seeing, because now, I see on Twitter all the time, oh, the Devils don't have depth. They have bodies. But you're looking at now where the gap is, I guess, on when it comes to on ice skill, because you can't
Hmm.
replace Jack, you can't replace Nico, and you can't
Hmm.
try. You have to figure out what your strength is, what got you into the NHL for as long as you've been there, and then that's your strength. You can't sit down and say, okay, Jack Hughes is out, so I'm going to replicate Jack Hughes. That's just not going to work. And I think that's kind of what people are seeing. And even Lindy Ruff has said, like, the group doesn't have that creativity anymore, so they have to figure out a different way to win.
Yeah, I think it's funny, right? Like now they're in that phase where it's like find the way to win. They
Mm-hmm.
have easily one of the best top six. Tyler Toffoli, they add.
Mm-hmm.
There's three players in my mind. I had the opportunity to watch Luke Hughes myself play for Michigan, but Luke Hughes, Dawson Mercer, Holtz,
Yep.
what do they bring to the table? Because they're more of the new kind of like newer faces with this group. What
Yeah.
do they bring to the table?
So I think starting with Luke, I think that expectations are really high on Luke. I kind of see him as almost like two different players. Like offensively and in the offensive zone, he looks like he belongs. He's quarterbacking the power play. He's collecting his assists. He looks really good in the offensive zone. When you look at him in the defensive zone, he's a rookie defenseman. He has to learn, he has to go through those highs and lows that every rookie defenseman goes through. So I think
Hmm.
offensively, he's been really strong. I think defensively, there's still things to learn because he's a young defenseman in the NHL, and that's just what they all go through.
Hmm.
Um, but he's been really a great addition as far as his offensive play. Dawson Mercer to me is just a responsible two-way player. I always said that. I think that's why, my first year was Dawson's first year. And I think that was kind of the edge with Dawson over Alexander Holtz is Dawson played a more complete game. And, he was a little snake bitten offensively for a little bit there, but he scored 2 goals now. I believe it's two goals. He's on the penalty kill. He's contributing in different ways. I like Dawson. Like you kind of know what to expect from him at this point in time. And Alex is always an interesting prospect to look at because he is offensively very, very talented. He has a great shot. There's other areas of the game that need to be worked on. I wouldn't say he's as a complete player as Dawson, which is why he maybe has been in and out of the lineup and hasn't really made a mark yet in the NHL. But you know what? Tomorrow's going to be a good test because they're actually going to play him in the top 6 along with Dawson. So I'm curious to see how I'm going to sound like a coach, how Alex is going to take that opportunity and like what he's going to do with it. This is what happens when you're around the coach.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to see kind of what he could do in that elevated role because that's what fans have wanted to see from him. Fans think that he deserves in that top 6 role. And against Winnipeg, who's a team that plays really hard against New Jersey, Alex is going to be in that position, or at least according to the lines in practice today, he will be. So Alex is more of, I think, a question mark out of the 3.
For our listeners, now most of them are Ranger fans, they're not watching the Devils every night. Who on this Devils team has really impressed this year?
I think as far as impressed and like biggest surprise for me, and I had to really think about this, it's Tyler Toffoli. And it's Tyler just because Fitzgerald and Lindy and players have talked over the years about New Jersey's system being a little out of the ordinary and being difficult to learn. It's kind of depending on how I guess plays break up and like break out, like it can be a little confusing for the players. Timo kind of needed that adjustment period last year after the trade. And I think coming in and knowing that and then seeing Toffoli put up 14 points in his first 13 games, I am just impressed with how kind of he adjusted on the fly, like no problem. And it could be the argument could be made that he was playing alongside Jack Hughes, and that just makes the game a lot easier. But I'm impressed with how quickly he adjusted to New Jersey's system.
Is there anything on this team that is non-pressing?
Like would you say like biggest disappointment?
Yeah, or disappointment or expectation that has not been met yet by anybody.
You know what? I'm going to say the team's defense as a whole. And players are always the first ones to tell me that when you're talking about defense, it's more than just the 2 blue liners on the ice. It's the 5 guys that are in front of the goaltender. And I think defensively, the team took a step back. I was kind of expecting it, to be completely honest. So it's not really a surprise to me. But I think for a lot of people, they weren't expecting the defense to struggle as much as they have, as of late.
What do you think is a cause of that?
I think one, the departure of Ryan Graves and Damon Severson, I think they did a lot of little things that maybe fans just kind of overlooked. And you have to think too, you have Luke Hughes, who again, rookie defenseman, strong offensively, still needs to find his way defensively. You have Kevin Ball, who was elevated to Ryan Graves' role for the past 13 games, and he's never played more than 42 NHL games in a season. So he's now adjusting to a larger role being in the top 4. You have Marino, who kind of struggled defensively a little bit at the start of the season. You have Brendan Smith in the lineup, and he was one that was in and out of the lineup, last year as well, rotating with Kevin Ball. So there were a lot of pieces that kind of, for me, was like the defense is going to struggle to find their chemistry a little bit to start. So yeah, that to me is not overly surprising, seeing kind of what happened in the offseason, who the new pieces are. I don't know. It makes sense to me that they're performing the way they are.
Kevin Ball came over from that Taylor Hall trade.
Let me tell you something about that trade. Everyone judges trades 5 seconds after they happen. Mm-hmm. And I always say, I don't understand how you could pick a winner or loser of a trade after 5 minutes or the next day when it's draft picks and you don't know who they're going to turn into. And I remember when Taylor Hall got traded to Arizona, people were livid about the return. That return turned into Kevin Ball, Dawson Mercer, and Jonas Siegenthaler.
Oh, pretty good to me.
Wow.
I mean, I think most people before maybe again, Dawson had a slower offensive start this year, but I think most people last year would have taken Taylor Hall for Dawson Mercer straight up.
Well, that is crazy. Wow. You know what? And I think, would you rather have one heart season of Taylor Hall where they kind of he like dragged them into the playoffs, or like now you have, like you said, guys that are starting to fill roles. That's actually awesome. With that, you know what? I'm going to start pegging off some of our favorite segment, the speed round.
Okay.
Pegging some of those off. What's the biggest problem this year with the Devils?
I can actually give you 3.
Oh, all right. So it's a 3-headed monster.
Three. First one is they're relying on their power play way too much for their offense, and they are depending on scoring 3 to 5 goals a night in order to win a game. So that is a problem. Second problem is they're not playing a full 60 minutes. And this is something that they didn't do last year either. This is a problem that they really had last year, but they're not playing a consistent 60 minutes. You've seen bursts of them like coming out and having 10 minutes where they're scoring 4 goals, but we have not seen a 60-minute effort yet. And their starts. They have a very slow start. But again, this is another thing that carried over from last season. They had 52 wins last season. 26 of them were come from behind victories. So it's not something that they can't battle through because they obviously did last year. But those right now after 13 games are my biggest problems that I think that they're having.
What's a player that needs to do more?
You know what? I always I feel like these questions are always so black and white, but for me, they're so
Yeah.
gray. I think so many people put pressure on points. Like that's what they look at. But there's so many other ways a player can contribute. But if we're looking at offensively points, I would say Andre Palat. He has 4 assists. He hasn't scored a goal yet. With Nico and Jack out of the lineup, I think this would be a good time for him and his veteran presence and his scoring, to get on the board.
Kristy, I actually need you to confirm this because I wrote about it. Andre Palat, is he the biggest Ranger killer like on the Devils? I mean, he seems to haunt Ranger fans for it's got to be a decade now.
It has to be between him and Jack.
Yeah.
I would say between him and Jack.
Yeah, I think Jack had a goal in almost every game last year, right? At least regular season.
Yeah. Jack, for some reason, he has the Rangers number.
So painful. What is the team's biggest flex and what's the team's worst heel? So I know we kind of talked about worst heel, but like what's the team's biggest flex this year?
It's the power play. It's definitely their power play. It's what's been keeping them afloat. And during the TNT broadcast, when Biz mentioned about if it wasn't for this red hot power play, they'd be a 500 team. And when he said that, I wrote the article about it. I said, he has a point. He really does. And I said, it is what it is. I mean, when you look at the Devils, there's 3 games that they have not scored a power play goal this season. Their record in those 3 games are 0-3-0.
Ooh.
So if they're not scoring on the power play, they're not winning the game. So I think that he was onto something. And I think that it is their biggest flex. And I wrote about this, said you always want the power play to be a weapon in your arsenal, but it can't be a crutch. And I think it's been kind of a crutch for the Devils recently. And if you want to, if I could change for worst deal, I can give you something else too. They have to learn to win. And Kevin Ball said this, they have to learn to win games 1-0 and 2-1, because it's great if you could score 3-4 goals a night, but if you're giving up 5, doesn't matter how many you could score.
Tough go.
So I think that's kind of the other thing is they have to stop with the goals against. It's just way too much. And at this point, the defense has been struggling so much. I don't even think it's fair to even critique the goaltenders at this point in time.
Now, Jack last year, he said this on the 32 Thoughts. He brought up Igor, but he also brought up like playing the Rangers is like the Super Bowl, right? Like that is the Stanley Cup for I think both teams really, right? With that said, you got a game at the Rock. The Devils play all this week. The Rangers have some time off. What are you? It's a few games out now, but like, what are your thoughts on this upcoming matchup? It's the first game played in the building since Game 7, where the Devils won on home ice, like a 4-0 victory. What are your thoughts coming into this one?
So the Devils have 2 games before the Rangers. They're in Winnipeg and then they go to Pittsburgh. And right now they've lost 2 straight games. I know Winnipeg gives them an extremely hard time. So in my mind, I'm thinking that they're going to have 3 consecutive losses in a row. And then they're going to have Pittsburgh, who's been playing exceptionally well. I think how these next 2 games play out is going to be a big thing, because if they drop 4 consecutive straight and they come home in front of their fans, and you know how many Rangers fans come to Prudential, I think that's going to set a different stage than if the Devils can kind of get on the right track and they go into that game on like a 2-game winning streak. So I think that it's always a good environment. It's always fun. Well, and you got to think too, like you're in the press box, so you're above all the action, kind of watching it at a different angle, different perspective. But I think the next 2 games are going to be a bigger dictator of how this is going to go for the Devils, because there's a big difference between going 2-game winning streak and 4-game losing streak.
Does any of that have to do with the Devils goaltending? I feel like that's the one thing we didn't talk about, but it is a hot topic. Like goaltending in the NHL right now, it's very hit or miss. You either have like Vassy or you're looking like the Oilers and you're dropping Campbell to waivers. So the Devils right now, they're rolling with Schmid, but like what's the tandem looking like? Ivanichek, how are they playing?
So Vitek Vanacek has, I guess, if you want to say emerged as number one, he's gotten more starts than Akira has as of late. The Devils goaltending, I I want to say average, but I think again the defense has just not like they're giving up so many. I mean, against Colorado, they gave up 13 odd man rushes. 13.
Hmm.
I just don't know how you can really properly critique the goaltending when the team in front of them is giving up the odd man rushes. They're, puck watching in the defensive zone. So for me, I'd say the goaltending is average. It's everything in front of them that's struggling. And people might disagree with me. But that's kind of how I see it right now. I think it's a little too early to judge VTech or Akira and talk about trade targets just yet. You got to fix the immediate problem. The immediate problem is the team's defense.
We've talked about Jack a little bit now, all almost like basically
Yeah.
brought his name up about 100 times, right? He's like the star. I mean, it's almost strange to say that for a team in New Jersey. Like they've always had some grinding type teams. What's it been like now? You talk to him, practices, post game. What's his maturity been like in your eyes?
It's I think people forget that he's a kid.
Hmm.
I think, everyone's obsessed with his media interviews and how much he hates the media and stuff like that. And listen, like if you're a player, obviously media is not going to be your favorite part of the deal. Like you're a player,
Hmm.
you love the game of hockey. You don't want, nobody wants to go up to a bunch of reporters with a camera and say, oh, hey, like, why did you suck today? Like
Hmm.
nobody wants to do that. And I think, again, he's a kid. I think there is that maturity. I think people really started to see it the end of last year and kind of in the playoffs. He's true to who he is, which I really respect. Like Jack is Jack. He's going to tell you how it is. And, I think that's something really great to see because you're so used to the cliches and hockey and sports media in general.
Hmm.
But there definitely has been a maturity to him, I think, since last year. And you're going to continue to see that as he gets older. He's a kid.
I love it. Now, before we depart, I'm gonna pump my own tires. I played a high school game at Prudential, so I'm gonna tell my Ranger folks out there right now, I scored a goal, and I thought it was the coolest thing because when Hughes was drafted and everything, I was like, listen, I got one more goal than Hughes. Obviously now that's all a wash, but yeah, that was a cool moment. I had the opportunity to play there. It was like the first NHL arena I got to like be in the like bowels of and so that was awesome. That was like 2018,
Yeah,
January 2018. But yeah,
that's
so
awesome.
I'm able to actually say I scored a goal there. So that's pretty cool. With that, Steve, you got anything else?
I do. I got a quick question. So here to wrap us up, we're
Yeah.
not at Puck Talk. We're not really big on predictions, but do
Um,
you have any prediction? If not for this game, how about the Rangers and Devils series throughout the whole season? Is there anything that you want to see in particular?
no, I'm so bad at predictions. Um, I think that I think a lot of it is going to come down to, I'll say, special teams. I think the Rangers have the second best power play right now behind the
Hmm.
Devils, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. I think special teams, because you saw Rangers power play burn the Devils in round one in game 1 and 2. They really won those two games based on the Devils' lack of ability to kill, the Rangers power play. So I guess maybe that's something that would be interesting. I think that's going to play a bigger role in the series, maybe than when they play other teams. Is that a good? It's probably not a good prediction, but that's pretty much all I have right now.
You know what? I think that's pretty good. We'll stick it to special teams. Special
Yeah.
teams is going to be the difference. Kristy, thank you so much for coming on. It's awesome to hear a different perspective. We have a lot of Rangers conversations, right, with whoever it is, but it's awesome to hear from the other perspective and someone that's in the hockey news brother sisterhood. So it's awesome to have you on. To hear your story too. I think it's something that whoever's listening, like if you have kids, if you're older and like just want to switch up in life, like Kristy's the person that did it. And I think she's doing pretty good for herself.
Thank
So
you. I'm not that old. I'm old, but I'm not that old.
That's right, not old.
I try not to be. I try not to be.
Long week ahead for the Devils, and it ends with Saturday's big match against the Rangers. So, Kristy, we'll definitely have you on later in the year to talk about this division because this rivalry is just heating up. It really does feel like we're gonna get a few good years out of it.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. It's at a point now where it's getting good again.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you guys.
Guys can check her out. We'll leave her socials linked below. Rangers Devils game 1 of this season coming up. Enjoy that. And always remember, it's just the luck of the puck.